Sir, audible now, sir.
Okay. And is it visible, my slides?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, very good afternoon to all the viewers. And at the outset, I would like to acknowledge my thanks to the organizers of this program from Velammal Institute of Technology, Chennai, particularly to Dr. Gladys, who has given me an opportunity to share my experience with you. Now, the topic given to me is the teaching learning styles and OBE practices. In a little while, you will understand that it may not be possible to treat the teaching learning process alone in isolation. Because according to OBE, it is a philosophy which is thematic and it is not linear, unlike your linear, time-bound and rigid, syllabus-oriented, examination-driven traditional system. It is totally contrasting with the TLE or the traditional linear system. That is why it may not be possible to handle the teaching learning alone in isolation. Whenever an episode is taught with a student, you have to assess them continuously. It is not examination driven. It is not testing the students. It is continuous formative assessment. So without assessments, it may not be possible to include in the teaching learning and in instructional characteristics. Whenever we talk about the instructional characteristics, we may have to include the institutional characteristics because you define in the pinnacle of your institute with the vision, mission, PEO, and we'll be referring to your standards like the AICTE or Washington Accord or the CDIO, which I'm going to talk about, which is also a standard. At the same time, it is also acting like a framework. Now, then again, whenever we talk about the teaching learning process, we cannot isolate and treat the teacher characteristics differently. So everything is included in a piecewise one. We have to go because the system, what is preached by OBE, is developmental in nature and not linear. So it doesn't matter, in a 2 hours time, I will try to concentrate whatever could possible in the teaching learning process alone. I will try to extract them. And I will be using a lot of terminologies because it has got a background with a model, which I'm going to suggest to you the best practices promoted by Robert Marzano. I'll be also using a hybrid model developed by David Merrill and Gagne's model. And that is why there will be a lot of terminologies will be adapted. If anyone gets any doubt, you can stop me and put your questions to you. I will also brief in a little while what is CDIO. If anybody worked in industry, in major industry for at least around, let us say 10 years, you'll be knowing that an engineer will be given with a task and first he may have to conceive what is the problem is about so that he can deal with that problem. Then he may have to design a solution for that problem, and those two could be done dynamically. But for what? You should implement it in the future, and there could be some problems in implementing this task, and also how to operate it. So whenever operation comes, sociology will come and the societal requirements will come. And whenever implementation comes, the skill required for an engineer will also be imbibed with that. Whereas design is something to do with the core, and all this core skill or the hard skill or the soft skills, we have to be imbibed along with the core. That is the idea of CDIO. So that is why I have taken these standards for that. And even Washington Accord, for the instance, it uses around, say, 12 to a few standards, whereas CDIO includes almost all the standards of Washington Accord, and it has got its own standards with around 20 and all. That is why I have selected that. And moreover, it gives a model to render the teaching learning in the classroom as well as in the VLE or virtual learning environment. So with this brief overlook, let us concentrate on the teaching learning styles. Now, one of the models which has been successfully used, the exploratory teaching principles, and believe it or not, it originated from ancient India. And because it uses so many components of the OBE, it has been very successfully adapted. It is not my publication. Whenever you see an italics given, it is reproduced from literature. This methodology, this framework or an exploratory learning process use reasoning and questioning at every level. Nothing is finalized as the final answer, and this is what exactly in engineering technology we do. Whenever a design is made, it is acceptable, but it will not be same with different designers. And another component is the creative thinking ability, because you may have to create different products with respect to social aspects or economy, for example, or technically feasible, technically adaptable to the society, etc. So therefore, creativity also comes, and it allows the learners to control their own process of learning. And that is exactly what the OBE preaches, and that is why this framework has been successfully adapted. Moreover, it uses an additional component in the teaching learning process with its metacognition, apart from the affective domain, cognitive domain, and physical or psychomotor domain. This is an addition which is based upon the connectivism and the constructivism that has been developed by educational psychologists. I have certain references, so whenever you see an italics, it has been downloaded from a research publication. And I will also quote from an ancient Tamil literature that which was done around 2000 years back, which says that the students learn only 1/4 from teacher and 1/4 from peer-to-peer learning. That is what OBE preaches. And the remaining 50% is exhibited through asking questions over questions, which is the reasoning competency. Now, let us take a look at this traditional, linear, time-bound, rigid, syllabus-oriented educational system, which most likely you are using at present. Now, if you look at any example for any course, you have certain units. For example, 5 units I have marked, it could be 6 or 4, whatever it may be. It has got several topics, let us say approximately, let us say around 10 topics per unit. It is not rigidly followed as 10 only. I'm giving for an example. So like that, there could be around 50 topics specified in the syllabus for a course. Now, a teacher, what normally is done with the input-output model, this is what the normal model, or I call it TLE, the traditional, linear, syllabus-oriented, time-bound educational system, which is examination-driven system. And OBE is just contrasting with this system. The teacher covers the first topic of that unit. Then in the second topic or third topic, wherever she wants, the teacher could conduct a test or an assignment. And it goes like that, covering, and it waits for the final examination. Then he moves to the second unit, similar way, conduct a test or assignment, cover the topic after topic in a linear fashion, and wait for the final examination. Similarly, third unit, fourth unit, fifth unit, or sixth unit, or whatever be the units of a course, the teacher covers it, and then the examination is done. This is a typical linear arrangement of the TLE. Now, this is OBE is heading for a total paradigm shift. You must understand this before we move on to the teaching learning process. Now, this system will vanish slowly, because why? Every system in the universe is non-linear. But unfortunately, we are treating it as particularly in education, as a linear system. Now, in fact, OBE says that you have to uncover the content and not cover the content. How do you uncover? In fact, uncover to a concept. When you don't take a rote information, because rote informations are available in the internet, and when you are going to give the rote information to your students, they are going to laugh at you. Now, you look at the recent educational policies made by the NEP, National Education Policy 2020. Just now it was announced and it will be implemented soon. I have marked certain classes of that NEP 2020. That fundamental core logic alone should be considered by the teacher, and it is up to the teacher and the student to cover any topic. For example, if you take an engineering technology subject content, you can divide or put an anatomy and make it into different pieces. One pieces could deal about the fundamental concept, another one could be the contemporary concept dealing with industrial products, or a product, or a procedure, or a project, whatever it could be, that is mixed right now along with the topic content, which is not allowed as per the OBE. You may have to segregate into a fundamental core, then the contemporary core, and the core basis, the basic scientific principles, and so on. This is what the 11.6 and 9.3, which specifies that the full autonomy is given to the teacher and the students to decide about the contemporary core or the other aspects. The fundamental logic should be used. And it is with multidisciplinary, then it will move on to transdisciplinary, from cross-disciplinary to interdisciplinary and so on. Finally, it will be transdisciplinary. You cannot segregate a branch like a civil engineering or mechanical engineering, etc. It will all lead to even sociology or psychology or economics, for example, it will be mixed with. That is the idea behind the design of the curriculum. That is what 11.2 says. And competencies, which is defined in the form of learning outcome. That is what again and again in the NEP 2020, it has been specified for higher education. And even in lower education, this has been specified, but there is a world of difference between how we are going to treat in the teaching learning process in the higher education scenario. Now, it is examination driven is gone now. There is no testing of a student. It is actually continuous formative assessment. Assessment the student is not worried about. In fact, on the contrary, in my opinion, the teacher will be worried whether how she or he is taking the students through her teaching. So it is not going to be examination driven. So that is why I said you cannot segregate the teaching learning process from assessment. Then it is not going to be even the choice-based credit system. We use the word choice-based and then we compel them to take certain electives and so on. It is not going to be like that. The credits will be in a linear fashion, longitudinal credit. It will be for a 4-credit course. After 1 credit, the student may leave. It is not, the credit is formed in the longitudinal axis. So it is going to be competency-based credit system. That is what has been very clearly mentioned in the NEP 2020. If anybody interested in going through, you can go through this document and you will understand that it is the outcome-based education which has been stressed, particularly for higher education. So this linear system is gone now. Now what else will come? I will give in a nutshell what is knowledge structure and how the teacher is going to handle the teaching learning process in the classroom or in the VLE or virtual learning environment or in the laboratory and so on. Now, instead of a topic, you take a concept. When you take a concept, you have to start with a real world task. That is why I said you have to start with the CDIO. Is a methodology or a policy which is used in industry. And an engineer is given with a task and he may have to conceive first. So that is why such a problem, a real world problem, is not a conceived problem. It is not a task given in a textbook. You have to take a real world problem. I have collected over around 200 cases in computer science and engineering and also civil engineering and mechanical engineering. There is nowhere I have put a fictitious value or a data. So that kind of problem, but you have to select in such a way that it should deal with the concept which you have selected as the central piece of your episode, which you are going to deal with in the classroom, or if you are going to push it in the VLE or virtual learning environment, it will be called as a reusable object. Then how to do it and all, we may have to deal with it because it is not an easy task. In the beginning, it will take some time because you may have to do an anatomy and divide your topic into whether it will fit inside in the VLE. Maybe you can use an LMS like Moodle, and then we should also consider the required competencies also. But if you want to deal with a concept, then you may have to deal with it in the classroom. There is no escape. Everything you cannot push it to the VLE. So you take such a concept and along with a real world task or a problem, you use a component called feature of constructivism. That is the latest pedagogical aspect of outcome-based education, which insists for a developmental system, and it is totally different from the linear system which you have just now seen. You take a piece of a topic from somewhere, maybe in the same course, but the piece of the topic has been already known to the student. It might not have been taught. For instance, the basic difference between the teacher-centric or teacher-led to the learner-centric, it is not that simple. That a learner learns by himself is learner-centric and the teacher handles the classroom is the teacher-led. It is not that difference. It is a world of a difference you must understand. To understand this concept itself will take maybe several days after going through rigorous workshops and all. A teacher of the current day teacher will understand the difference between teacher-centric and learner-centric. Now, the learners might have obtained certain knowledge mostly from the internet, because it is called through LL or lifelong learning. He might have attained. Even school children nowadays have taken materials from the internet. So you must select in such a way to find out that particular learner characteristics, most of your learner characteristics of your students. Then you decide that piece of topic which is related to the central real world task, and that you have already decided about the concept which you are going to deal with in that episode. Now, you arrange it logically in such a fashion using a pedagogy so that the learner learns. You are not going to learn for him. It is not possible at all. He may have to learn with. You are going to act like a facilitator. So you go to some other content which has been dealt with, that may be available in some other episode or some other courses or some other piece of topic in the same course. Then you again logically arrange it in a piece so that you form the knowledge structure, which is going to be a unique, independent, self-contained small piece, because the way in which you are going to cover a logic or a logical concept in your TLE, this may take 1 hour, but here the entire episode cannot take more than 15 to 20 minutes. That's what the best practices say, because the students will not put their attention in learning that concept. If it is not possible, you may have to redo the work and then rearrange it and bring it to an independent piece called the knowledge structure. Okay, then you can have, maybe you may go to some other program, for example, in an embedded system. If more than 50% is dealing with electronics rather than automobile. In an automobile engineering, what embedded system is used in electronic instruments which are used in automobiles is more than 50% of the mechanical system. So that is why it is becoming a transdisciplinary area in which you are going. You have to talk about economy, social aspects, etc., etc. So you have to go to some other program, some other field in which this one is required. This is done by the particular teacher and for the particular type of students which the teacher is dealing with. So your knowledge structure is arrived at, and you have to arrange it very carefully. The biggest problem is coherency. It's a problem based in the outcome-based education. This is going to be the major problem now. The granulating those pieces about which you are going to see in a little while. And this is a developmental system. We are not going to go deep into that one because I'm going to just give an overview of the teaching learning process. So the difference you must know, that is why I concentrated from TLE to OBE. We will go to the process now in the teaching learning. Let us again go back to the traditional teaching process in which you bother about qualification, qualification, qualification. So there will be an entry level qualification, there will be a terminal level qualification. They also don't bother because of 200 years time, we all forgot about learning. We are all interested in qualifications only. So the same thing is followed in the TLE. You start with education qualification and terminal level qualification. If I am not wrong, even the audience here with around maybe 50% of the people who may not be interested in outcome-based education, I'm sorry, put it this way, because they will be interested in qualification, getting a certificate from AICTE, and that is why it's sitting. It is just for, in a lighter sense I'm making. The same thing lies with our students also, because they're all interested in qualification, and the quality has gone down, terribly down, particularly in engineering technology. That is what we have seen now. So what to teach? That one, the teacher right now selects a content which is based on in syllabus. So the syllabus, what it becomes is, since it is not the fundamental core, logics is not segregated from the contemporary core, it is becoming an ever-increasing syllabi. And that is the problem now, what we are facing, because the students will be interested in the topics which is, or the portions which are needed in industry, which is ever changed. For example, in 1 year time, 50% of the content in computer science or IT become obsolete. So what they are going to learn in a 4-year time, God only knows. They will never be using whatever it has been learned, because this is a clubbed, bundled content is what the teacher teaches in the TLE, and the topics are specified with objectives. Objectives, for instance, I will say that at the end of this course, the students will be knowing what is continuity equation. And the student, if you ask at the end, he will say, how do you know that I know at the end of this course about continuity equation? I do not know anything because I was sleeping at the back bench when you were teaching in the classroom. This is how they are going to use. That is the problem with objectivity. And even if you say at the ABET specifications, it uses objectivity because ABET started in 1939. Several years back, more than half a century back, when the Washington Accord was made in 1989. And it was made not by educationists, it was made by professional engineers for movement of professional engineers. If you are a professional engineer who understand, anyway, because of time constraint, I'm unable to say. I had a problem when I was in abroad, when I quoted for a software development in Lesotho, a country in Africa. And because I was not holding a professional degree, a professional certificate, professional engineer certificate, I could not get that project. Otherwise, I was shortlisted. Okay, now let us go to the CDIO concept of the OBE, which is based on OBE. Now, this is a non-linear development. As I was mentioning to you, every system in the universe is non-linear. So what we were looking at the TLE is the content to be covered or the syllabus to be covered, which the teacher takes just like that from the syllabus book, and he takes it to the students. But here, let us take the first axis, which the teacher who is going to design, who is going to take the commitment for the students' development. At this juncture, I will put a terminology for the teacher as well as students according to OBE. As far as students are concerned, they take the responsibility of learning. I once again will put it, the students take responsibility for their own learning in higher education. I'm not talking about lower education. That is the philosophy of OBE. Then what is the role of a teacher? A teacher is committed for the development of the student. That is a major difference between the TLE and the OBE. So first he consults the students as well as other systems for whom he is going to teach. So he considers the learner characteristics, and then he consults the institutional characteristics, instructional characteristics, and simultaneously assessment characteristics and develop. So let us go how he designs this from the pinnacle definition of his institution. For example, one of your institutions should have a definition in its mission, like your institution is going grow to a world level. For example, a product development in global perspective. Let us assume that is your vision statement. A neighboring institute could say that it is for rural uplift in pan-Indian condition. So both the definitions of their mission is totally different and moving in a totally different direction. So even though the subject content could be same with both the institutions, it will not be possible to take the same teaching learning process, even though the subject content is same between two institutions. It is not possible to compare between institution to institution. The same thing is there. It is not possible to compare between student to student, which was done in the TLE. Because here, it is not only the content which he is going to develop. You are going to develop this. Teacher is committed for the development of the student in an overall holistic way. That is an integrating skill and component, the skill and attitude, etc., along with the core content. So that is why he consults with this pinnacle of his institution, and he brings out in proper logical terms with PO and CO. Again, I want to specify here, POs and COs are not outcomes at all. In fact, anything could be outcome, because the best word for outcome is outcome. That is why they have specified. It could be called as unit outcome or end outcome or exit outcome. You can call anything as outcome. Even graduate attributes is outcome. Even your vision, it could be the outcome, or mission could be the outcome. What PO and CO are statements describing the learning outcome already attained by the student. I will repeat once again. The POs and COs are not outcomes. They are statements describing the student learning outcome already attained by the student. So now what you are going to give the statement is you are anticipating the outcome. So the student need not bother about it. Of course, he bothers indirectly. or the institution bothers. And that is why a standard is being used, like the PO, which has been given by the CDIO or the Washington Accord or Dublin Accord or Seoul Accord or whatever be the accords, or you can develop your own. That is what NBA also has stated, and even NAC has stated. If it is insufficient, you can call it PS or program specific outcome. In my opinion, in my personal opinion, it is meaningless to call program specific outcome. Everything is program specific. So when you take 12, it cannot be 12 only. It can go to 14 or 15 or 16, depending upon your subject-specific pedagogy. That is why you designed that. So when this one is anticipated and designed and specified as a descriptive statement, and which goes to the next one, and there comes the problem. The biggest problem is how to imbibe this or how to develop this SLOs is the problem. And that is why we are going to deal with in the teaching learning process, how we are going to do. And then CDIO has given 20 standards, has also given a framework which is called rationale and evidence from the teaching, how to develop SLOs. Once the SLOs is assigned, then you match with it with the CO. Then you may have to re-engineer and rearrange, redesign your SLO, then go back and then satisfy the CO. Once this is done, then your COs are can be assigned. How it is done through the teaching learning process, let us see. Okay. Then in the other axis, it is why piecewise you have to take. That is why I said it is not possible to deal only with the explicitly to deal only with the teaching learning process. You look at this, what to teach then, piecewise, who to teach and why to teach, then what to teach is a knowledge structure. Then we can segregate the knowledge structure into episodes when you are going to deal with in the classroom, and structure the episode, categorize them, whether to push it to VLE, etc. And that is done in scientific way. You require a framework or a model to design that. We are going to see about a model in a little while, if time permits, let me see. So the knowledge structure is designed with cognitive structure. I told you in the very beginning, I'll be using certain terminologies because it is an educational philosophy you must know. The major thing, what even our NLP, which says that the National Education Policy, which says that it is a Himalayan task to train our people. So training is the first thing which is required for the teachers to understand what is OBE. If that is done, then 50% of the problems could be dealt with. Now you must understand what SLOs is required for whom and how you are going to design the knowledge structure. So you start with who you are going to design. Why should you teach the students? Then only you can design the SLOs and then consult, then go to the design of the knowledge structure. So consult design. And again, you may have to look at this, how are you going to deliver? Now, when you're going to deliver in the classroom, that is the topic given to me, the teaching learning process, there are 4 M's required. It's not restricted only to the 4M, but the most important one I will tell you, it is the metacognition. A new addition, a teacher must know. It is awareness of one's own learning, because it is going to be self-regulated learning by the student. It is also called autonomous learning in the higher education scenario. Don't get confused with OBE has got a different design for the lower education. Here is going to design, he is going to learn by himself. And then who is going to assess? He himself is going to assess. Who else? His peers. Who else? Maybe a group, maybe senior students and the teachers or from outsiders. So it is going to be a very complex system. So the metacognition depends upon the awareness of learning and the teacher's awareness of the students in terms of learner characteristics. So the material is not the textbook. Even our recent education policy has clearly specified that it is up to the teacher to design. So it is not textbook, it is trade book. Let us not go deeper into that because we may not get time. That is, the knowledge structures are arranged along with the cognitive structure. The cognitive structure is an instance of a pedagogy in the classroom in which metacognition is adapted. So it is dynamically changed. You cannot fix it in the beginning. So it depends upon that day's mode in which the episode is taught with. You deal with that. Then you can select appropriate media, maybe using a flipped classroom where the student goes and learns through YouTube or a program which you have given in the VLE. And it is always advisable that you give a portion of it to your students for the flipped classroom and you use as VLE's facility. And OBE is heading for, particularly CDIO, is heading for a business education. Your education is no longer will be in the service sector. It will be business for the teacher. So whenever a teacher designs most of her portions for the flipped classroom, it will be through the YouTube, and he gets some portion of money. Maybe NPTEL or maybe IM or whatever, maybe even the Coursera or whatever the professors give from, let us say, Rice University or some universities get some amount. The same thing could happen, and it will motivate the teacher. I don't say that you become a money-minded. It is what the direction where OBE is going is towards money, that is for business. Even if you don't want to be, if you want to retain the education as a service sector, you may have to switch over to OBE, which is totally contradicting in some components, comparable in some components with the TLA, but it is contrasting with TLA. Then the methodology, again, the teacher discusses with the students and the authorities of your institution using institutional characteristics and design the methodology. It could be either problem-based, mostly in engineering technology I'm talking about, or project-based. There are some differences between problem-based and project-based. And mostly these two areas only, most of the components, the concepts will be delivered in the class. Then the students themselves using is autonomous learning designs, and the assessment immediately comes. So it is actually called delivery assess. See, consult, assess, consult, assess. So how are you going to do the assessment? Is going to be formative assessment or third component? The third component is meant for self-regulated learning and through group discussions, debate and things like that. There are scientific means how to design these things. So this revolves around like this. So everything is based on SLO. You consult the SLO, then bring out the design SLO, then deliver the SLO. It is not the subject content goes to the backbench. So the SLOs come to the front, and the students' learning outcome. We will see in some of our examples of how it is. You can use it in an example. I will show you how it is being designed. Okay. Now, how to do the scaffolding? Scaffolding is a support given by the teacher. A teacher is not acting like a sage on the stage. He becomes a guide by the side, or in the sense he allows the students to develop himself, and then he watches whether he is going in the right direction or not. So, as I told you, it is a negotiated contract, an agreement between the teacher and student for his development. And the teacher should tell in the very beginning, say, I'm not going to test you. I'm going to assess you and me, and I'm going to give feedback and feed forward. Feedback, feed forward. Like that only you have to develop. But I am committed for your development, but the responsibility lies with you. If the horse is thirsty, you take the horse to the pond, then who has to drink water? You cannot drink water for the horse. Same thing you can tell, I cannot learn for you. You may have to learn, but I will give you all facilities. How to do it? Now there is a big problem currently you may be facing. In my opinion, it may take around 1 to 1.5 years time to switch over, in my opinion. In every course, a teacher who is going, right, and the time has come. Now we were talking about OBE, and the government has specified and brought it, they made it a law now. And suddenly a cliff has come in the road and you may have to climb. You have to climb, the time has come. Now you may have to do it, but the major problem will be to understand the concepts of the philosophy of OBE. Now with the present one, the TLE, the traditional method which you are handling now with the consult your syllabus, and then which is in a bundled content. Now, the bundled one, you may have to understand another terminology called the KD, or the knowledge dimension. There are again 4 knowledge dimensions. There are other knowledge dimensions also, but most of the ENT you can segregate into 4 knowledge dimensions. Yeah, factual is a piece of information which is independently existing, in which a question is not asked further. The student accepts what it is. The teacher also accepts what it is. For example, Ohm's law. Nobody is going to ask what is Ohm's law. You will understand later in OBE is not for testing. I will show you if somebody is interested. a final semester end examination of Singapore, National University of Singapore, Electronics and Computation Engineering, the question paper says at the end, this is Ohm's law. If you want to use it, use it. If you don't want to use it, don't use it. Nowhere in the question paper, it is questions like what is asked, or explain, describe, nothing like that. In what context you will design, in what social context you will use this one, and what will be your aspect of design for this, for acceptable design and things like that. So it is going to be what the students are going to be doing at the end. So the factual content is mostly dealing with what. So you push it to VLE. Then procedural content, you may be knowing step-by-step procedures. You may be knowing what is a procedure, maybe in mechanical engineering, how to weld two materials together, etc. Which may change with respect to some logics. If it is so, you go to some other procedure or go to some other procedure and all. But the biggest problem will be these two. The concept is group of information which is integrated together in a specific way by the student. So for what context he will be linking with different information, it is up to him. Here only the creativity comes. The creativity with respect to a specific behavioral component, like economically, is he going to design economically? Or is he going to look at the environmental aspects? Or is he going to look at the societal need as an engineer and the society, his commitment? Or he is going to use professional ethics and so on and so forth. So, and he uses his metacognition, the awareness of learning, that how much information he could gather and what information he is requiring, because the information, it is going to the web and the internet. If we type it one after another, in 2024, it will reach Alpha Centauri, a star which is 4 light years away. That much information will go to the internet. So what information is going to take? And if a teacher also is giving a rote information, he is going to just laugh at you and he is going to refer to them. Then what for he is sitting in the class, for qualification. That is what, and qualification is never going to work in the industry. I worked for around 14 years in India and abroad. I know thoroughly well, nobody bothers about qualification. They bothers about your competency one. I was basically a civil engineer, but throughout my life, 36 or 40 years, I was a software engineer, developing hundreds and thousands of software only for that. I'm not simply boosting it all, I'm just giving an example. It is only competency that matters. Whatever I developed, I was never taught in the college. This is what is going to come, and officially it is going to enter that. It is going to be transdisciplinary in nature. That is what OBE is heading for. So the metacognition is very important, and the teacher should know. Now, this one, you do a first level of anatomy. You just cut it into pieces and then do it. But this is not the best method of doing, just to satisfy the accrediting bodies. Only in India, the accrediting body is government specified. All of the Western countries, only industries, they do the accreditation. Okay, whatever it may be, the policy, I don't want to comment anything on it. It is only my opinion. So the second autonomy is a bit complex, which also deals with the third anatomy. You have to segregate your subject content into the concepts, whether it is a threshold concept, a concept in your course without which a student cannot move further. Even though it is a choice-based credit system, competency-based credit system, certain components, the fundamental core logics, are very essential that a teacher should design. Now, in that one, he segregates and designs the knowledge structure in a particular knowledge dimension with the real world context. Now that he may have to imbibe certain characteristics for the threshold concept, mostly threshold concept. He can select any concept. Then whether what is the skill required for the particular learner characteristics. Then the attitude, maybe ethics or maybe engineer and society, or his skill level to know about the environmental aspect, or project management, or teamwork, or communication ability, and so on and so forth, with the engineering knowledge. There also you may have to segregate whether he requires a fundamental core logic principles, or problem analytical ability, or a complex problem solving, how you're going to deal with in the industry, a complex problem solving ability, and so on and so forth. So those things you have to imbibe carefully to form authentic tasks. And the authentic task only you are going to deal with in the classroom, and other small knowledge dimensions, you can push it to the VLE using flipped classroom. Then the third component, you push mostly procedural and normal problems. You can specify or the assessments. You can push it to the VLE so that you can automate it. There could be some overlap. After the flipped classroom, the student might come and ask, sir, in SR, self-regulated learning, I find it difficult. Can you move it? The senior students normally takes over because it will be a huge workload for the teacher. So an OBE insists that, it suggests that a teacher need not do the assessment for the corrections. It is normally done by the senior student, and the senior student who prefers for assessing their juniors gets 1 credit or 2 credit or 1.5 credit. Even half credits are now there in a longitudinal credit way. It may not be graded credit, it could be ungraded credits. So for that, many students will come forward, and if there is a problem, a teacher intervenes. The same thing with the numerical problems. If he is going to deal with, he can push it to the VLE. So let's take an example of developing a knowledge structure. As I was telling you, it is thematic with authentic task. In the CDIO criteria, you design what level of the SLO is needed. We will see with an example of SLO also. There are 3 levels normally suggested by OBE, the low or medium or high. It could be anything. You can also do it, but you will get into problem with accreditation and then match it with the POs of the other institutions. That is why the 3 levels are okay. And most likely the 3 levels are decided with the current learner characteristics. What are your students right now? See, your students' current learner characteristics may not be same with the students who have entered into, let us say, IIT. I'm not trying to compare. Comparison is not there in OBE. It is only the ability that matters. But for an instance, I say some mathematical background ability of a Orissa student may not be same with the Kerala student. Like that, you may have to find out the most of your students' current learner characteristics. Then you design the knowledge structure by segregating the core concepts which deals with the basic scientific laws and theories. For example, laws of thermodynamics or Newton's law or binary system in computer science and so on, or standards like ASCII, how it evolved and all. This is called core basis. And you may have to segregate very carefully, depending upon your pinnacle definition of your institution, what is the CCL and FCL. The current core logics with its industry that comes from industry, and again, in my personal opinion, the best teacher in engineering will be those who have worked in major industry for around at least 10 years. Not because I worked and all. It is my suggestion. Otherwise, you may have to involve with the strategically aligned industry of your institution. You cannot have a simply MOU with all sorts of industries. Depending upon the definition of your pinnacle, like vision, mission, PEO, you may have to strategically align with that particular industry, maybe railways, maybe the CPWD or Infosys or Cognizant, whatever it may be. You have to do it. But retain the FCL, the fundamental core logics, which is talking about engineering technology of your lead discipline. Even it is going to be a cross-discipline or transdisciplinary approach which you are going to follow. You may have to find out what is that fundamental core logic belonging to your lead discipline, and then put it and design each knowledge structure in a particular knowledge dimension. There could be some overlap, but you may have to redesign and carefully do it. This is individual teacher must do. Then simultaneously consult your assessment, because as I told you, assessment cannot be taken away from instruction. Even in an episode of instruction, you may have to deal with how you're going to do the assessment. So it could be third component, which mostly the students themselves will do, or the FA or formative assessment, in which teacher will be taking the lead. So both combine. You must find out, you must consult your students, and then design, redesign, etc., etc. Then design on the SLO. The significant learning outcome will be decided based upon the several SLOs. This SLO is different from this SLO. And then influence the institutional characteristics, instructional characteristics and the PO. The PO is a standard which is specified either by CDIO or your ABET or Washington Accord or whatever. So accordingly, then you have to yield structure, because you may have to motivate every student to tune that lesson. All right. Now, before we go to the instruction model, I will stop at this level and put forth for discussion. I want you to ask some questions. What is that you have understood so far from my lecture? Am I audible, first of all? Yes, please.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is my slides visible?
Yes, sir. It's all visible.
Okay. Now you put the questions to the participants, whether they are in tune with me or they are simply sitting. I'm sorry, this is one in the lighter sense. You can put questions, please. Whatever you have some doubts or you do not know. I think most of the terminologies may be new to most of the teachers. So you can ask any question. Please, but you can switch on your mic and then ask before we go to the model. Because if you cannot understand, the granulation is very important in the OBE. So when it is not granulated, the student will have to leave one credit and go. There is no failure case in outcome-based education because they are not tested. But leaving one credit and going is there. So failure in the sense, not that there is no failure at all, but most of the cases it is not there. It is not like pass or fail. Yeah, please, any questions? Are you listening? Yes, please, any questions? What shall we do, madam? Shall I go ahead with further? Maybe, or they?
Yes, sir, we are listening. You can proceed, sir.
Okay. So no question at all?
Yeah.
Any question you can put so that I can?
So we have a QA session at the end, sir. Probably they will be posting the question at the end.
Okay. All right. If there is no question, I will continue with my discussion. Okay. I'm going to talk about what is cyclic and developmental education system. The developmental education system is not new to India. In fact, Swami Vivekananda has already mentioned about it. The education system must be developmental in nature, in a holistic way, in an all-round development. When Rabindranath Tagore started his Shantiniketan, in Shantiniketan, the Vishwa Bharati University, around 100 years back, he said, all are genius, all can bloom, but not on the same day, not in the same way. That means each and every student will have a specific learner characteristics, and the teacher must identify that, and one could be somewhat big or greater in one aspect. For example, if a student could be knowing the basic concepts of engineering, fundamental, the basic knowledge of what is what and all, but he may not have the ability to solve a complex problem. Another student may be very good at solving the complex problem in a heuristic way, that is out of the box. That is also very essentially knowledge. But he may be very weak in knowing the fundamental. That leave alone the core concept. One could be very good in speaking. He may be satisfying the customer needs using his beautiful words and things like that. But he may be very poor in other qualities. He may not consider the social aspects and all. Like that, each student is different. That is what Rabindranath Tagore has said. He never said about engineering technology. He said all are genius, all can bloom, not on the same day, not in the same way. So it is a flexible system. It is not qualifying, entry level qualifying and exit level qualifying. It is competency gaining and learning. This is what he says. After 100 years later, one of the pioneers of outcome-based education, William Spady, he says all can graduate. not on the same day, not in the same way. Exactly what 100 years back Rabindranath Tagore said. That means it will be flexible. That is what we have seen. We have seen in the diagram. It is not the qualification alone. It is the entry level, current learner characteristics, and aspiring learner characteristics, which is specified in your vision mission PEO. Now, that is why you are taking. And the time frame could be 2.5 years or 3 years for some students, some students 4 years, some students will graduate with honors and so on and so on. Somebody may get training in arts also with capital A. All will be coming together. You cannot segregate humanities from engineering and all. In fact, most of the humanities will come to engineering, like sociology, psychology, economics, and all will come. So a student might take one course in mechanical engineering, he will go to sociology. He may go to art with capital A, that is going to come. And that is going to play a very important role, because I worked in industry. There was a big court cases, even in India, in which our undertaking company has several crores, because the industry, what we designed was okay, but it was not looking good. That is what, it was not aesthetically appealing. And it went to Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said it is not aesthetically appealing, so you pay so many crores. That is why our company lost. So you understand, art with capital is very, very, very important now. So an engineer should deal with that. He should deal with what is beauty and things like that. And tomorrow it is going to go like that, because we are going to deal with societal problems, not engineering problems alone. So where are we? So it is going to be developmental in nature. What is development? Let us see quickly a model which is given by David Merritt. In fact, my final model is not development. I have used the CDIO's frame, and also with Marzano's best practices. First, you keep at the central level an authentic task, which is the most important component. While designing the authentic task, you consult your students first. What are their current learner characteristics? Are they prepared to go to the ultimate aspiring learner characteristics at the exit level? Exit from your course, your program, will they be ready to achieve that? If not done, you redesign and then go down slightly. Don't hesitate. You can state in your vision mission that your institute will become the best in the world. It is going to happen with the current learner characteristics. You must find out. Otherwise, it will be only in papers. Accreditation body will give only certificate, and no institute will take your students for higher education and things. It depends upon, they have to recognize. It is not only for advertising you do accreditation purpose. You really implement OBE. Now you go to the first, cognitive structure. Cognitive structure is a pedagogical instant of an instruction. Now you are not giving rote information, but you are instructing the students. That is what they want. 99% of the students want instructions and not rote information. If you give a rote information, you are perhaps giving the oldest, 27 years old back rote information, and he's going to laugh at with his friend, and he's going to say, this idiot is giving 27 years back one wrong information, and I will give you with Google search, Yahoo search, and this search it will go, this engine will be very fast in giving that, and I will give you 108 information of the latest one. So it is not information, it is instructions you are giving for a concept, and that concept is for mostly threshold concept, an important one which you are going to deal with, and that you arrange an authentic task. Now you take the first instant of the cognitive structure using the metacognition. I will come to it a little bit later. The first one, what Merrill says, is activate or retrieval cognitive structure. Most likely, you may be using the core basis for your concept, maybe laws of thermodynamics or binary operation in computer science, or ASCII characteristics, how it evolved and things like that. You put certain questions. You have not perhaps taught this or spent time in your classroom, because through flipped classroom, he has learned it. I have got feedbacks from 5,000 students and all. Believe it or not, in an engineering students. They don't want rote information from teacher. They have written and given to me why the teachers are taking unnecessary time in giving a rote information, which we can get it from the internet. They have to give the concept only. They can put questions through my quiz. So the quiz alone is to recall, to find out their recalling ability, mental ability. 90% will be open book and it will be open discussion. They can go, no time limit. They can go and do it. Let them take time. The responsibility lies with them. Don't test them. But certain thing, maybe less than 10% for recalling ability, that is mental ability, you can start with. Mostly it is with the core basis. Then you go to the next component. Time is very important because the entire knowledge structure, you're going to take not more than 10 minutes or 5 minutes or 15 minutes maximum in the classroom. Otherwise, it will be boring. They will not listen at all. You have to go to the switch over to the next knowledge structure. If you have topics according to your syllabus, it could be, let us say, 50 topics could be there in a particular course, for example, with 5 units or 4 units. But in knowledge structure, for the same course, it could be 350 to 400 knowledge structures will come. Now, how to deal with it? The teacher will get plenty of personal time rather than the TLE. Why? Because most of the knowledge structures will be automated by the teacher himself, and it will be pushed to YouTube or NPTEL or Coursera or edX, whatever. And you also get money for that, for the login. Not only your students from Africa or from South America or from so many people will be logging in, and each login you will get a small amount of money. And this has worked out, and it's going to work. So it is becoming a business sector. So, but the next knowledge cognitive structure is comprehending. It is by demonstration, not structure. But my final, the one which we are going to show is by best practices of Marzano with Gagnos. But just to give an idea about what is a cyclic one. Now, this is with respect to the authentic clause. This is with respect to the authentic clause. Ill-structured authentic clause. Now, that you are going to explain mostly, and mostly you are going to deal with the fundamental core logic, mostly, along with the help of a particular CCL, contemporary core logic. Then you move on to a knowledge utilization cognitive structure, in which again you talk with the ill structure and you ask, a similar one is there in the automated VLE. You go to our site, you can say a particular student, Ramaswamy, your assignment is 22.B. Go to my site and then look at it. You can open your mobile phone and then put Sita Lakshmi, your assignment is 18.C. Because of a learner to learner, the characteristics differ, and it is only in the beginning you find it difficult in arranging, and that is not going to take much time. And they are going to do it by themselves. It could be a project, it could be a mini project, it could be an assignment or a real world, another real world problem, or sometimes it could be contributive tasks also. Now you ask the ill structure, now you say, now you are able to tell. Now, what is that? You integrate that one. A learner integrates. In everywhere you activate the learners. The learner observes. The learner is going to do that with respect to the central theme. And then finally the learner integrates. So this is a learner-centric approach which he develops. He develops, you are only acting like a facilitator. Okay. Now, finally, the knowledge structure, if it is not integrated with the SLOs, as I was telling you, is not POCO. There are 400, 500 SLOs scientifically designed. We are going to see some examples. You can also collect those SLOs. You cannot change because it is pedagogists who have brought out that. Educational psychologists have brought out those things, and we are using it. They are mostly in English language. I will show you some examples and see. Now, where exactly what has been imbibed is the knowledge structure which you are developing. Otherwise, somebody is looking at that one without knowing the very basic concept. Unlike you integrate them through a real world task, this is what the case is going to be. There are some, some blind people trying to figure out what is an elephant. One man says it's looking like a wall. Another one says looking like a snake and things like that. That is what is going to happen. For any example, he says it is dealing about communication exercise only, because you have imbibed communication skill in your one. Another one may say it is talking about banking application, like that each one. Yes, please. Any questions?
Card. Oh.
Any questions, please? Because I hear some. Can I go ahead?
Oh.
Yes. All right, I'll go ahead with that. Now, I will give you an example of the learning outcome and the possible instructional methods which is used in, and I have not shown the cognitive structure because it's an expanded. This is an example to deal with. I'm differentiating between the learning outcome and your CO. The CO is specified through authentic task normally. It is normally demonstrated by the learner. Example, cued prepositional information. I have given in italics. That is derived from Jonathan Tesmer and Gagne, David Nader, and Marzon. Many pedagogies have defined that. You may have to spend time in arriving at appropriate learning outcome. It's called student learning outcome, and then try to define for your instructions. The possible graduate attribute is core knowledge. And the possible method and assessment, if I say instructional method, is also assessment. This is formative assessment as well as third component, maybe group workshop, etc. The meaning of this one, once he has attained, the students will be demonstrating, indicate a plan or suggest a method. Another one, the skill component, which is imbibed in the core, prepositional information. It is a learning outcome, student learning outcome. You can do it either with document for instruction in the classroom, whatever is the possible verbs and all. You cannot, it is not appropriate, it is not possible at all to use Bloom's model. Bloom's model is a wonderful model for school education up to the lower education. In fact, I myself asked the chairman of NBA, and he also agreed in nowhere we have insisted on using Bloom. Bloom is a wonderful model for school education, lower education, but never in engineering technology. You will be erring in that. But Bloom's taxonomy could be used to some words, but that is also not possible to use it in LMS like Moodle and all, for automatically extracting using the word. It will be confusing. So it is not possible either that. So I will show you some of the models which you can use it. So in the classroom also you are using such verbs, such phrases, depending upon the authentic task and all, so that he learns. See, one thing is how you have instructed a particular skill and a particular behavioral component. For example, engineer and society, how you have imbibed there, and how you instruct, so that he can assess. Is it not? Without instruction, how can you assess his ability in complex problem solving? You should have instructed how to deal with the complex problem solving, or how to communicate, how to debate through a scientific means. Otherwise, how can you expect him to debate? You simply test him. You talk about you are unable to talk, and he will say, as a teacher, you yourself is unable to talk. That is what he will say. You should find out scientifically how to instruct those things. The skill component with the prepositional information, present a plan. So he is going to debate on it, articulate. Acquiring bodies of information in low level is the core knowledge. Uptime, required complete information. This is how he is going to attain at the authentic task, through authentic task. The classroom teaching or tutorial, etc., can be done. So the knowledge structure should design what the student will be able to do after the episode. This is okay. Now we will go to the metacognitive system. As I told you, the teacher is committed for the development of the student. The student is holding responsibility for his own learning. How to organize this authentic task? Now we'll go to the kinds of learning We'll go very quickly about, because the topic given to me is the teaching learning process. You can segregate how you're going to deliver in the classroom in a 4 kinds of learning. One is response learning. This is the meaning of nature of the teaching learning process in the classroom. Or in the flipped classroom, your VLE. The fields which you are going to imbibe. You are going to imbibe in your computer science or mechanical engineering or chemical engineering or electrical engineering. You are going to imbibe art. Because in ethics, it talks about aesthetics. So you may have to include. Without knowing art, how to do it is a problem now. A teacher must learn about a particular art in which he is going to put. That is why our Indian culture and civilization cuts. You have to learn about it, because our new education policy also says that it should be in tune with art. Finally, for most of the Indian society, only you are going to design a power station or a whatever component you are going to do. Maybe less than 5% may go abroad and do. And finally, it's going to be a global one. Again, it depends upon your definition, your pinnacle of your institute. So science, which induces rules, laws within the nature. Engineering is uses creativity, because every product could be different, but within a boundary. You cannot do, it cannot be unaccepted one. That is engineering technology. And the technology which creates a new product. So all these things, depending on the fields of imbibing, everything will be imbibed in the particular concept where the imbibement or the imbition is required. Now, response learning, it could be for a particular cognitive structure, the instance of pedagogy, which demands mostly for factual and procedure, which demands the responses from students. You can ask, what is a Ramasamy? Tell me, what is that? What is this? Mostly what? How are you going to do? How are you going to do? You're not going to ask questions like why, because why is concept. A concept learning demands creation, because each one will have a different ideas. So a perception could be different, but there are acceptable solutions. For example, somebody is designing an algorithm and then coding. Then the coding, somebody may be putting efficiency into matter. So it may be efficiently running program. Another one may be putting so many documented, he may know that attrition rate is the most important one in software industries. When a software engineer goes off, the other software engineer taking over the old software will be a problem. And that is why I'm documenting, even though it is not efficient. So efficiency could be from somebody. Another one is documentation. So both are acceptable, and depending on the context in which it is given. So a concept learning, you can ask the question like why you have done like that, why you are doing like that. Then verbal learning, mostly the factual content. The factual content is this one maybe through your, mostly it is the fundamental core logic. And the response learning, maybe it could be the CCL or the contemporary core logic, because which deals with procedures. And here, mostly factual, and mostly it will be the core basis. Maybe what is Ohm's law, what is this thing. Even if it doesn't know, it doesn't matter much. But you can say certain fundamental thing you should be knowing. In what words is it there in this word? What are the key words? Even if he forgets, he can say, you can refer. No problem at all. But that is also needed. A mental recalling ability is also needed, maybe 5 to 10%. That is verbal. And the prose learning is a higher wisdom, like education, because he may have to articulate a social aspects or an ethical aspect for his design. So that also is there. If you look at the response learning, concept learning, and verbal learning, the volume which is dealt by the teacher and the student is something like that, which is non-linear. It's not linearly varying, but mostly concept and will be more, response learning will be more in engineering technology. And in literature, arts, etc., or the components which you are going to use it in your engineering technology, the prose learning will be more, the verbal will be less, and then a response will be less, and so on. But finally, it is going to be transdisciplinary, your final design and whatever. Maybe the component may be less here. It may be more in engineering. It depends upon the subject category, lead discipline, what you are going to do. So the delivery is done with appropriate aspects. The feature of constructivism is one thing for the teaching learning process, which is advised by the OBE. According to outcome-based education's philosophy, the Socratic method of asking questions. That is what I showed you in my very first exploratory learning principle is taken from Upanishads. So it is the teaching learning. The real meaning of Upanishads itself is the teaching learning. So it says reasoning. Why it should be like that? Why it should be? There is no final answer. So Socrates used to put that. That is called the feature of constructivism. When they learn a concept, why have you put economy into consideration? He will say, sir, I put economically design. It is the most economical one. So money is saved. Another group of students, you can ask, why you have wasted money as uneconomical? You say, sir, it may look uneconomical, but I have used ethics. You say that fellow, that group has done some unethical practices. It may look economical, but you look at this component, which is against law. It is spoiling the environment. He has selected reciprocating pump, and is explaining the working principle of reciprocating pump. But he has used it so that it could be economical solution for pumping a slurry in, let us say, some area in Tamil Nadu, in which it may be spilling out oil. But whereas we have used a centrifugal pump, which may be economical, but it is not creative putting oil. And that is what the environmental aspect we have considered. So that means you have to argue out. They will be, you keep quiet, because it is both are acceptable solution, fine. And it is up to them to articulate their design. The concept education, which is again a part of the outcome-based education scenario, you start with a concept which is very much there in the CDIO, conceive first, which is mostly with engineering knowledge, basic engineering knowledge he will be using in the beginning, which will lead to analysis of a particular problem. For analysis, they use a problem analysis. What is going to be the problem? Is it going to be for economical design, or it is going to for environmental protection and things like that, or nothing is specified? So an option is given, how we are going to analyze the problem. Then he is going to design. In the design, he may be using heuristic design or out of the box also, or development solution, how he is going to scientifically done it. But it should satisfy the law, that's all. Otherwise, it's up to him. So then he goes to detailing. Unfortunately, detailing is missing in CDIO, and OBE doesn't talk about it. Anyway, it doesn't talk about any framework and things like that. But in Indian context, I feel detailing is very essential. In fact, when at this juncture, I will stop a little bit and I will talk about the accreditation. In my opinion, in my personal opinion, we were forced to sign a Washington Accord. Washington Accord has got standards which is for Western thinkers. It is for Western nations to satisfy, if you put it very crudely, for the whites. This is my opinion. Now, there are certain standards specified there. You see, it is very complex problem solving, but safety is missing. What they say, safety is not explicitly specified. You can only interpret, but the safety it is given to some other trade or some other, because they are interested in commercial aspects. That is why it was designed. In my opinion, because you must understand economy, major economy, the macro economy. Until 2015, the WTO, which is in Geneva, this World Trade Organization, they only decide about the trade balance between nations. For example, developing nations and developed nations, when we sell, let us say, mangoes or tea, who fixes the rate? WTO. WTO say this much only we can fix and then you can go. And we are importing, some countries are importing, let us say, equipments for war, defense. And from a developed nation comes. And the rate is fixed by, approved by WTO. So there will be a big balance. We are unable to sell that much mangoes to them, but we want some petrol and we have a huge amount, and there will be an imbalance. And what is called as then we cannot pay, WTO gives one structural adjustment. The structural adjustment, what is the balance out? Why engineer must deal with, even political science we have to deal with. You go through POs, it's all talk about international market, politics, everything. But we will restrict, we will not comment about the government policies. But we have to know from an engineering point of view. So that we are interested in engineering education. So the structural adjustments, what has been done is they will come forward and say, okay, the structural adjustment, the well-developed nation will aid you in education because it is for social sectors we will help, or medical, health, for example. So they are social aspects, so you do it. So these countries, what they do, okay, fine. For structural adjustments is done for aid or a grant in social sectors like education. Once it is given, they might force you. Now that is also in their hand. They might say, you have to sign Washington Accord. If you don't sign Washington Accord, there will not be World Bank because the fund will be given by Internationally Monetary Fund or World Bank. The WTO will tell them so that that money will be adjusted. So those people will say, you have to sign Washington Accord because it is all over, they have signed. 28 countries have signed. Why not? Why not? So these countries, what to do? They will sign. This is my personal opinion. Once it is done, we are leaving away from our own requirement for our requirement so huge in India. That is, we have our own culture, civilization, art, and whatnot. We have everything. But our engineering, we are going to deal with that. So for that, so this is what will happen. One thing is we are very strong in detailing. For example, spare parts. No country in the world has got that much spare parts like India. India is manufacturing spare parts. Why can't we reuse for that, which is not done in many countries? What they do is they simply throw away the car, they buy another car. They throw away the computer, buy another computer. But in India, by nature, we are very strong in spare parts. So detailing is very important, which I feel. Where will you fit in with that in the standards? Now, of course, our NBA says you put it in here, additional one, program-specific outcome. So you can do it, but it is not scientifically done. Whereas China has gone away from Washington Accord, for instance. It has got its own standards, but based on the 4 pillars of education given by UNESCO. UNESCO has applied at very many years from 2005, 2008, 2014. They have designed 4 pillars of education. And this has been recently specified in our national education policy. Now, in that 4 pillars of education, CDIO came. The CDIO is originated from educational institution. It is relying upon UNESCO's standards. Now, UNESCO also are in the hands of Western world until now. Now, there are things are changing. And recently, around 1.5 to 2 years back, our respected finance minister, the present finance minister, government of India, has removed the education from WTO. It is a wonderful act. First, they resisted. No, it is a social sector, we cannot do. But our Honorable Nirmala Sitharaman has done, no, education will be in our hand. Instead, the structural adjustments could be done with, I have read it in newspaper. So it is with Swachh Bharat. Then they asked, what is Swachh Bharat? Then they said, Swachh Bharat is a social here. And we convinced, and many countries supported, and knowingly or unknowingly, willingly or not willingly, now they have changed. The WTO changed from education to Swachh Bharat. Now we are in our hand. We need not bother about Washington Accord. We need not bother about any particular accord. We can have our own accord. So that is what an engineering teacher must think now. Now we never think, why can't we use this opportunity now to decide our own standards? And we can refer to this. But CDIO, since it is originated from educational institutions and also from the 4 pillars of a United Nations Declaration, I have referred as a framework. It is up to you. Whatever blue mark I have given, it's my own opinion. It is not a statement which I am giving. It is my opinion. It is up to you to decide about it. Okay. Now, from detailing is one component which is missing there. But in engineering, it is very much there in India. Okay. Conduct investigations of complex problems. If it is not acceptable, go back. Now here, why we are going back? Analysis, design, detail, investigate, reanalyze, redesign, redetail, operate. No problem. Again, analyze, design. And for analysis, what do? You assume an initial design, whether it's civil engineering, mechanical engineering, computer science, any engineering discipline. Before analysis, using rules of thumb rule, you put a first initial design and then analyze it for a boundary condition. If it is acceptable, go ahead. The detailing is not acceptable. If that it is the final investigation says it is wrong, reanalyze, redo. For analysis, you require a design. For design, only after analysis comes. It is something like which one came first, whether hen came or egg came. We don't know. So this is what is the process. Because of this, Bloom's model cannot be used in higher education, because Bloom's model is a linear model which starts from a basic comprehension of a knowledge. To know what is that, then comprehend why it is used, then how it is used, then problem solving, then solution analysis. It is fantastic up to 9th standard. Up to the middle school level, it is fine. Up to, let us say, 10th standard of our education system, but never in higher education. I have ample proof that in engineering technology it is impossible, because even to understand a very fundamental concept, even to know an engineering concept, he may have to analyze. He may have to go to the level of judgment a little bit there, then reanalyze, and finally understand a basic concept. You understand? So know in knowledge, then comprehension, then application, etc., cannot be used in engineering technology. Okay. Any questions, please? Okay, we'll go fast because I want to leave it to, otherwise it will become a one-way. Vision accounts for 70% of effective learning. Adornment and posture, because the topic given to me is teaching learning process, the classroom teaching. I'll go through quickly. Your handwriting should be legible on the board. Blackboard or whiteboard is definitely needed in education. Not that don't depend upon. Otherwise, you are giving information. If you are giving rote information, they can learn it from internet or this thing. But in the classroom, a very complex concept is given to students. You require a big board, whether chalkboard or whiteboard. The regular method is there, but that is for explaining a concept that they require, the students require. Don't simply carry it away by it. You can put maybe 75% of your content, knowledge dimension in the form of factual or procedure to VLE. Without VLE also there is no OBE. But it is inclusive both. But without classroom also there is no OBE. And this concept is going to remain there in at least another 50 to 5 years. Afterwards, I don't know what's going to happen. Okay. Your screen arrangement, it is recommended like that. Your PPT screen should be above, because otherwise the teacher will find it difficult. There should be a blackboard below that. And here and there also, there should be a pedestal and so on. Okay. Audition is the another one. The teacher, when he explained, only 7% carried away by the words used, and 38% effective communication is through tone. And increase the tone. Is it art, you say? So that goes to the mind. Because it is for learner-centric approach, they require that. Okay. All right. We should go with confidence. What you see here is Katy Perry, one who won 13 Grammy Awards. She says, if you are presenting yourself with confidence, you can pull over pretty anything. That should be the attitude of a teacher. And OBE says, because he is not going to give information. Never ever try to give rote information. You are giving instructions to the students. So you should just attract it. All the students are going to listen to you because they're going to talk about a big concept. You concentrate that. You should be full with that concept. You should be giving with industrial input and things like that. Kinesthetic is an added one which CDIO wants to promote it. It is the students you must find, there are methodology to find out what students, because we are not going to talk about learner characteristics. It is only the classroom teaching. I have left it to that. It is possible to find it. It is through real world examples you must take for kinesthetics. Some of the examples with the domain, which I'm saying, the cognitive domain is the faculty of head, and the affective is the faculty of willingness to learn, because the emotional aspects comes there. And the psychomotor is the faculty of hand, which is going to do with laboratory and all finally is going to do with projects and things like that. And metacognition, the awareness of learning. So when vision is the nature of the distinctive marks, and then combining these things, you have to integrate. And this is what is going to happen. I will give some of the examples of vision. Interpretation and working principle of centrifugal and reciprocating talk is going to design. So cognition is a faculty of brain with vision is going to look at it, whether you're going to design the VLE, the virtual learning environment, and so on, you have to take care of this thing. Vision plus affective domain, even though generally it is not in our purview, but adornment of a teacher matters, because that is what OBE says. In a learner-centric environment, he is going to watch. Soldering, delving, step-by-step procedure. That is psychomotor plus vision. Vision plus metacognition is very important. We cannot get time to deal with it. Seeking an information by at-risk, there is no failure case. Peer-to-peer learning, self-regulated learning, group learning, so many things are there. So at-risk peers want some information, then the peer-to-peer help is there. That is lines with mentorship. Mentors are there. That is with metacognition. Audition, example, audition plus cognition, the thinking power, listening and explaining, explained by a concept like the C pointers by a teacher. Enjoying a music with affective domain and audition, in our purview OBE, it is an inflection of a teacher. Listening and judging a problem of a running machine could be psychomotor. And metacognition, a particular peer is a good listener to find out. A mentor could find out, or a class teacher could find out. Kinesthetic, geotechnical laboratory in civil engineering to find out the consistency of a clay could be with kinesthetic and cognition. Sculpturing is with the affective domain, but aesthetics look of a project. Is it going to matter? Definitely it matters, because aesthetics matters in companies where I work. When we look at the quotations given by many companies, unless and otherwise it is beautifully done, we will throw it. Even though it may be economical, but we want presentation to be good, because the society requires that. Many project or a hardware project with the psychomotor and kinesthetic. Sports activity, group projects, etc. with the other one. Okay, some of the findings through research. You may have to do research with one of the pedagogical area, constructivism, mostly through this example of response learning. If your concept is through response learning, more should be audition and more should be metacognition, but you do for your own design of your pinnacle, depending upon your PEO, you have to increase this, mostly with respect to PEO. And the vision will be less. Vision may be more in concept learning, audition may be less, and metacognition you design with your PEO. And verbal learning, it is mostly with vision and a little bit more with audition, and metacognition may be a little bit. Mostly through E-mode and lifelong learning with VLA, virtual learning. Cross learning, we may be not more, audition may be more, and metacognition more, depending upon your pinnacle definition. Exploratory processes. So you must find out your student characteristics and go. All right, we will just move on to delivery of the authentic task. The principle of constructivism, you know, the learners build their knowledge. Now the activation phase and the use of explanatory, you have to define the problem. Now at this level of designing the authentic task, we will go back to the SLOs. I have given some examples of the SLOs in hard or in high level or medium or low. You have to decide about your particular learner characteristics and then decide the knowledge structure. It could be in any form of the knowledge dimension. Then whether it is assessed through third component of the formative assessment, continuous assessment. Then your authentic task, you have to use your mapping. Mapping is what done here with your first level of mapping and all. And then you go to a cognitive structure. In what cognitive structure, which we said is a recalling or describing or knowledge utilization or integration. This is some level, and we are going to get a hybrid model now. And which cognitive structure you are going to deal with the authentic task, and where exactly you are going to infuse this SLO, depending on the various levels, you are going to instruct this. And accordingly, you can assess them. All right. This will be a general classroom setup in the teaching learning process of outcome-based education. The teacher will be moving around here and there, and all students will be looking at and the board will be there. You'll have to use the chalk. There is no escape from board. At many instances, I have practiced that one without this thing. Also, it's not there. From concepts, you may have to change depending upon the student teacher. You may have to use it. Text some of in the instructions, you may have to use some taxonomies. Let us see this taxonomy. Why Bloom's model is inadequate according to CDIO. Bloom started in 1956, very old one. It is purely linear. Key thinking system is ignored. How he is going to conceive, particularly in higher education, how he is going to solve the problem without knowing something, how without analyzing, without social aspects, how he is going to. The key thinking is missing. It consists only of words. There is no phrases, and it is very old. And only the Anderson's revised one, only modeling. This one has came here, and this one came up. Evaluating, creating, and this is only verbs were used. This is words, this is verbs. Otherwise, the categories did not change. And he himself has accepted in many papers that it is meant for. It's an excellent model for lower education. Now, the words used, it's not possible. We have tried in a PhD work that use for concept extraction. There are problems like using the taxonomy. For example, if some students wants to know, I want to know the critical use of pointers, why pointers are dangerous to use, then certain words like describe is mixing up here, describe, arrange, it is mixed up with different levels. For example, all these things are mixed up. Design, it is coming like that. So it made the computer get confused. In concept extraction, we tried, even the 40% could not satisfy. Whereas the Marzano's phrases or the Gagno's phrases, or mostly this Jonas and Tesmer and all, is working very well, and we will go to the best practices. The best practices of Marzano, again arranged through Gagne's one. You start with the self-system, consists of self-systems. In 5 minutes, I will temporarily stop and want for discussions, and we will come back here. Because it involves a little bit, it is a big concept to know that. So I do not know how far it will be effective in an online mode. Your self system uses the understanding of the particular students by the teacher. And the students should understand the mode and the methodology which the teacher is going to give. I'm talking about instructions, not information. So the self system consists, it's a big system. It is derived scientifically, it has been derived. We will see in a little while. I think no, hyperlink I have removed because it is the original one. Okay. Now the self system leads to metacognitive system. We'll see about it. It is the awareness of the particular learner, and if it is satisfied, okay, go further. Otherwise, you change. That dynamically the teacher changes his instruction methodology. That is why it is not objective specific. You cannot specify objectives. It is objective driven, but outcome based. So it uses affective domain of both teacher and student. So metacognition uses that. Now, once it is satisfied, you move to the next system. It's called the cognitive system. It uses specific, recognized, scientifically accepted student learning outcome. Declarative structure is a learning outcome. Prepositional information, cued prepositional information. For example, articulating content, it comes in the comprehension or mental procedural cognitive structure. I have to explain with the example, otherwise it may be difficult to understand, because it's a philosophy. It's an educational practice. So you move on to the next one, to the comprehension. Once this phase is over, you go to the, if required, you go back to the real world task, which is the authentic task here, to make them understand. See, you see, this is the problem. That is why you ask constructivism. You call on students. Ramasamy, what did you understand this? Why? Okay, I will give you an example. You are going to teach about helical spring. A helical spring, the very basic process, the concepts of the understanding, the working principle of helical spring. You talk about a real world problem. For example, you say that if your pinnacle definition is rural uplift for pan-Indian condition, then you say, because depending upon your pinnacle definition, you'd select an authentic task. You'd select a design of bullock cart, in which the central B is supported by two helical springs at the end. While moving the bullock cart, when it turned right side, the left side helical spring collapsed. It yielded and it just collapsed. Can anyone tell whether, you don't put anyone tell, you know the knowledge, the metacognition of your students. You can ask by name, Ramasamy, do you know why, what could be the cause in which the helical spring might have collapsed? Then you might say, sir, tensile force could be, oh, tensile force, Kandasamy. What are all the forces you could apply in a helical spring with respect to the bullock cart collapsing in that spring? Then you say, sir, a tensile force could be, where exactly you can apply? You don't answer. The principle of constructivism says the students build their knowledge. Sir, a tensile force could be applied at the end of the helical spring. Oh, very good. What will happen to the spring main length? Sir, it will increase. Wonderful. Sita Lakshmi, what other forces could you apply? She would say, a compressive force could be applied. Then you ask Kandasamy, is compressive force very severe and sensitive to helical spring, the strength? Then she said, no, sir, constructive compression could be applied, but it's not so sensitive. Oh, Sita Lakshmi, could you understand? It's sensitive. It's a force, okay. Oh, sir, may not be. But in the case of bullock cart, do you think the compressive force would have collapsed? No, sir, it's not. Ah, okay, no problem. You don't, because they're all learning. You know, you should not suppress them. You should not test them. Don't test any time. Fine. What other forces could be applied? See, you're going back here with an appropriate SLO. These are all the design of your knowledge structure in which you are going back to the real world. And they have to understand by themselves the concept of the different forces that nobody's answering. Then I put a question to all the participants, nobody is interacting. I'm sorry, in a lighter sense. Any other force could be applied. You open. Nobody is answering. Ramasamy, Kandasamy, all gone. Nobody. Then one fellow is slowly raising his hand. Oh, yeah, come. What the? Sir, a sort of, what is it? Spike is taking place. This is the best practices, you see. They must find out by themselves. Sir, in the case of bullock cart, it might have put one end, okay. So there is a kind of, what is it? A twist can be applied. Fantastic. Yes, got it. Now, could you understand twist? And what exactly the twist is? Sir, it is torque. Oh, wonderful. Now, what is the direction? You say this direction or that? Sir, it is might have clockwise direction. In the left-hand side, when it is turning, was it clockwise direction? Sir, they stress at it in the anti-clockwise. Fantastic. When it is anti-clockwise direction, what will happen to the mean diameter of this helical spring? And the most important point, which one you say? Sir, it is torque. Oh, wonderful. Now, this is what metacognition and the self-system and things like that. I'm sorry. So, you have to design appropriate SLOs, and you should scientifically apply to this model. Then you go. Now you understand. If your pinnacle definition says of global product development, then you can say, what is the best stress, the form of the helical spring cross-section to take shear, torsional shear? You'll say circular. You prove it, you'll prove it. No, that is only an information. In what context? Altis Corolla car, they preferred a rectangular cross-sectional area for the spring inside the box. Can anyone tell? Then they will go back and then search by themselves as a project they will come. Even though it is uneconomical, sir, they have selected a non-circular cross-section because the headroom should be small, because it is hitting the bottom of the Altis Corolla car in Indian condition. Fantastic, fantastic. So the social thing matters, the economic doesn't matter, it is pushed. So all these things come together in engineering. So that is why it is, you require a scientific framework for designing the institutions, and you require an appropriate selection of the SLOs, which are 400, 500 SLOs are there. Appropriately you select to design the authentic task. And the definition of the authentic task is going to specify the CO. Your CO, then only you can put a tick mark. Whether ethics is there, put a tick mark with the PO, or engineering society, put a tick mark. Otherwise, only for the sake of accreditation, you put a tick mark here, here, whether the student knows or not. You are only testing him, and you are just analyzing him. What is that? You can, a fellow going in the street, you call him and test him, he might answer. Does it mean that you have instructed properly? It depends upon how you were instructed through OBE. That matters. And so a scientific model which is developmental in nature, but coherency is going to be a problem, a major problem. All right. It keeps on going, only 10 minutes left. So there are different systems and all phrases you can recognize from a list of, instead of asking, do open a list. The Bloom's model, Bloom's taxonomy say list, but here you say recognize from a list, which is a word of a difference between these two. All right. An example for a device independent setting, I have practiced with hundreds and hundreds upon students of computer science and the field of engineering about a concept using this model. I have used it for retrieving more 2.5 minutes I took, and 13 minutes because analysis I explained in the class, 12 minutes for knowledge utilization, metacognition 3.5 minutes to find out. And after this practice, I got feedback from hundreds, maybe 300 students. They were all running towards me. Sorry, this is what we want, this is what we want, this is what we want, this is what we want. They want outcome-based education. They don't want linear education system. And the government policy also has changed. Only our teachers must change now. Again, some more example, the cognitive structure and the SLO. Keyword prepositional information, knowledge utilization, cognitive structure. Core could be the GA. Group work, etc. Your CO definition could be finally indicate a plan or suggest this is the authentic task. Another example with skill, imbibing skill. Prepositional information in the activation phase of the cognitive structure, etc. Now we will go back to the slide which I started with your linear system. You started with one topic, covering another topic, another topic, another topic. You conduct a test or an assignment, another topic, wait for the final examination. You do with another unit. Here, you take a key learning area defined by the government. You select a real-world task according to your pinnacle definition and your students' current learner characteristics and their aspiring learner characteristics. Decide upon your SLOs, select that particular knowledge structure, design that with a real-world task. You may take something from here, something from here, something from here, something from some other discipline. You go to the next task. You go to the next knowledge structure. Something, repetition will come. You go back to that topic, come back to this, take another topic, another, again repetition. This is I have derived from David Merrill's paper appeared in 2000. And finally, everything is over. This is called using block scheduling for 1.5 hours, but each knowledge structure could take 10 minutes or 15 minutes, so that then there will be a gap. So maybe few knowledge structures could be covered in one 1.5 hours block schedule. The approach is holistic, which is thematic, whereas your serialistic or traditional method is operational approach. Real world context, sequential, specific to whole. This is a bigger picture is given us. That is called holistic. Top-down organization, but design is bottom-up. Design is top-down. Delivery is bottom-up. Bottom-up here. Only that one organizes bottom-up. Specific for schools, for higher education. Mostly in India and Western countries, etc. Okay. Now, the design of authentic task and knowledge structure is not a simple thing to start with. For a 10 minutes delivery of a knowledge structure, you might take in the beginning, maybe 3-4 days. In the beginning, one day, afterwards. So the design might take, but once it is designed as a template, you can take away the contemporary task, maybe in 5 years' time, 50% of engineering technology syllabus of the CCL is becoming obsolete. In the circuit branches like electronics and communication engineering or instrumentation engineering, in 3 years' time, 50% of the CCL is becoming obsolete from your syllabus. In 1 year time, 50% of the current syllabus of the computer science is becoming obsolete. So they cannot learn. What is that becoming obsolete? It's not the fundamental core logic, it is the contemporary core logic. Once you design your knowledge structure as a template, you can throw away the CCL according to each time when you develop. And you allow the students to collect the CCL. You concentrate on the fundamental core logic. That is what industries also want. That is what students want. That is what education also wants. And the delivery of authentic task in a classroom may take 10 minutes, but you have spent 10 hours. How to deliver? It may look messy in the beginning. What is that? Teachers put questions. Call on students, Ramasamy, Kandasamy, etc. Add details to the students' answers. You don't answer. Offer examples. Teachers organize the content according to course outcome and not objectives. Teachers do the preview and the review of the students' progress. And teachers do too many learning tasks for the students on any given day. Most of the classes, teachers work harder. In most classrooms, teachers get far more practice than students. Western Australia dropped OBE for school system 2007. And the United States also dropped for school system. And South Africa dropped in 2010 in school system. But in higher education, it has been an excellent system, well proved. Okay, I was giving to this one on Android concepts, how Android succeeded and why Symbian embedded operating system, the mobile phone, failed. I tried with that. So I will conclude successful facilitators enable learning, scientifically proven model. If learners fail to learn from you, your instruction will become a waste of time. You have to use a model like CDIO because it uses evidence and rationale evidence to build from the SLO to CBO. Thank you very much. Any questions? You can put it now for 5 minutes. We can answer. Madam, you can put the questions.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 5
minutes there.
Participants.
First question is, was I audible? Because I was moving here and there, the mic system I did not.
If you have any doubt, please ask him now.
Were they listening? Because there is no question for this. Anyone who listened to my lecture?
Participants, you may ask questions.
Participants,
now.
Any participant who listened to my lecture? Nobody listened. No one? Oh God. So my 2 hours lecture went waste.
No, sir. No,
So,
no,
sir, somebody,
it's not like that, sir.
Sir,
Oh.
somebody asking in the chat box, what is
Okay. Show me
OBE
what is
measure?
that. I'm not seeing chat box.
Okay, sir, what is OBE measure?
Sorry, OBE measures competency, not the core knowledge alone. Anyway, I did not talk about it. It's a good thing. Who asked that question? Fantastic question. You put it quite, it measures competencies. Wonderful question.
Kamachi
Any
is
other question?
asking.
I'm not saying, yeah?
Kamachi is asking, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Any other question?
Any other questions, participants? You may ask now.
Chat box, nothing is coming. Eh? Okay, I would like to acknowledge my sincere thanks to the organizers, the college, Velamol Institute of Technology, and particularly to Dr. Gladys, who has given me an opportunity to share my experience with you. Thank you, madam, for this opportunity.
One more
Thank you.
question.
Yeah, yes.
So how to arrive PO and CO mapping?
It is very simple. Unless and otherwise you design SLOs, you cannot map with PO with CO. CO is defined through SLOs. And SLOs is for delivery in the classroom. And SLOs will group together for significant learning characteristics. And the characteristics will be defined in the authentic task of an episode in the classroom. And the authentic task is nothing but CO. He will be able to demonstrate, he will be able to articulate the economical aspects of the design. So the particular SLO belongs to a particular behavior or a skill and a particular core component, maybe design, maybe complex problem analysis, and it is imbibed. So which one is significantly featuring, you can put in that authentic task that episode. Now, once that is done with a significant level of skill is communication, then you can put a tick mark in that particular CO with the people in communication. If the significant learning outcome is ethics, because it was demonstrated in the authentic task in a particular cognitive structure, you have scientifically instructed the students about ethics along with the core content, and the student will be able to articulate the ethics, and he has proved that he is able to do that. So ethics, you can put it in that particular authentic task of a CO, then that one can be marked in the corresponding ethics of the PO. The POs are standards defined by another body like the Washington Accord or ABET or CDIO or whatever it may be. But these things the teacher has designed and the student has demonstrated that in a particular core, a particular significant learning outcome of ethics has gone there because he has used it, demonstrated in a particular cognitive structure, and the student has demonstrated. Now you can put the tick mark. Then mapping becomes just 5 minutes job. Yes.
Thank you, Dr.
Any other question?
Sir, really, I am very impressed about your presentation, sir. Very energetic session, actually. Really, thank you very much for your presentation, sir.
Okay.
Wonderful presentation.
Okay. But this is what is going to be the future, because yes, this must be designed. Otherwise, traditional method, I think no college is actually doing that, this kind of thing. They all teach through the traditional one and then write and stop at the level of CO. That's all.
Okay.
And then they map it, they find it difficult to map because how they have instructed, there is no proof. How the student has demonstrated, there is no proof. Yes, it is only students were tested and they were giving only what. It is not the real outcome.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This is my opinion.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, participants, for your listening. I hope you enjoyed your day. So tomorrow, all of you join before 9:55 a.m. So thank you. Have a good day.